Hi guys, today we're going to try learning about the stroke types that are in your paint tools. I know we covered a little bit of it, but we're going to go ahead and get Suzanne set up with a black surface so that we can use a bright color to very easily see what's going on with the stroke types. If you haven't done it before, playing with the gradients and the brushes are great. You can set your stops, play around with what kind of colors you've got, and you can get a really cool effect pretty quickly. If you add that to, say, like a noise texture as a brush mask, or maybe Musgrave, since we'd still have that in the the procedurals for the brushes, not like the rest of the renderer. I kid. You can play around with the color ramps that are in the procedurals. So you set a color ramp. Unfortunately, it's always too low for me to get it, but pull the stop in, the black stop in, make a copy of the white one, pull the black over the other side and kind of squeeze it, and that'll get you a line or a width, kind of like a piece of tape or something. I love doing rake and random, so I can just find out how something works right off the bat. And we need to start examining. The first one in the list is dots. So it's not as obvious because I've got the texture on there, but literally as I dab, it just puts one dot of brush instead of actually trying to continuously dab along my stroke. And if I pull across, it's literally just lined up dabs instead of one solid string of dabs. So here you can see it better without the texture. We'll go ahead and get back to I'm going to go back and forth like that with the fill tool for black because I want to keep resetting without having to reset my image. Here we've got dots, not dot, but dots. That's the same as what we were doing. We'll just give it a little bit more. You get a kind of an oily paint, an oil paint feel if you're using the gradient like that with the pressure settings. And it can get pretty addictive to play with these procedural masks on the brush because it's like a really quick way to get a paint tip, because the default brushes are just a circle. And it's not as interesting. This is the drag dot where you can literally just pull a paint daub in where you want it. Interesting side note, this is the one area where you could maybe skip stenciling if you want to load up an image. You just need to make sure that you scale your texture mask for that, or even as the image as a brush, you want to scale it down to like 1.6, 1.8 of your cursor space so that you get enough room to capture all of your image, and you could drag dot. Now this is your regular space stroke, but using that, you stabilize stroke with a Shift S or with the indicator, it makes it to where you can do a very, very quick job. Airbrush isn't really my favorite. It's kind of hard to use. It's the best way to do it is to increase your brush tip, and it's not as fun, at least not for me. I'd rather use space and a mask. Now we can play around with the texture again, because here we've got the anchored stroke, and that's really easy to adjust. You can kind of see what's going on the surface of your texture before you commit, and that's always nice. Now setting that edge to edge kind of gives you a little bit different of a draw, so you can try it out. It's not as complicated. You just kind of got it. You just really have to get in there and just try things, see how they apply. I would suggest to everybody to just get in there and do just kind of like this file. Take Suzanne, add a texture, and just start feeling out what the stroke types do. Now this is a line stroke, and because of the way I've got the rake and random on there, you're getting this hodgepodge of cross rotated strokes. So if I turn off random, I think it's going to end up being a straight line. Yep, and that can work pretty well too. That's kind of like almost like what we had with the anchored, but it's a little bit more controlled for point to point. Now, one of my favorite things is using a curve stroke, and a lot of people don't really realize what this is. So I know the options are in that little menu to start add a curve and start doing this and that and the other. All you gotta do is control click the first one and then click again for the next point, and then you can drag your mouse while you've clicked and it'll actually curve and it'll follow. It's very easy to get used to, but you have to put your hands in and start trying it. You know, the thing is, the curve is in screen space, so it's by the view. So if I was to rotate or scale this down like I did this here, you don't get the exact same stroke, even though it is a curve that's saved. What my wishful thinking is, what I would love very, very much, I know this would cost a lot of time and money on somebody's part, I would love it if we could use a curve object, like a grease pencil object or an actual Bezier curve. It would be stored like this, but that it would stick to the surface of your 3D mesh, and then you could project from that position to that spot, and then you could save that, and then it would be a way of reproducing stroke areas, and I think it would be a lot more beneficial. But you know, we've got to work with what we got. So anyway, there's some more play on using the gradient, and it looks like I'm going to try a distorted noise and squeeze it down and see what we can do with that. Kind of like thinking fire. That's kind of like that, but I think if we just squeeze the white side up, we might get some more with it. That's pretty good. But I can't stop messing around with stuff, so here I go trying to see how it would apply with a different stroke type. So a drag dot with a random, and that's pretty fun actually, because you know, the randomness gives you a little bit more of an effect actually. So anchored is pretty cool too, because then you can kind of add the way you want. And I decided to flip the color ramp. I wanted some more of that orange and that red instead of it leaning heavily on the yellow. Now remember, this isn't anything other than just a gradient being pushed through the brush, and I've got a procedural texture as a brush mask and playing with the stroke types. This is pretty much, that's all there is to this, and I'm just playing around with mix modes because I wanted to see if I could cut that back out and get back to black, which is, I think it ended up being subtract. Yeah. And subtract it out, it gets an area there, and then I paint back in with the red, and that's pretty much it. The stroke types are pretty much straightforward, but you just have to practice with them, playing around with jitter, playing around with your just different applications of your textures to your brush. I hope that helped out, and I hope you get out there, try some new things with Blender, try some new textures. And really think about this. You could use a lot of different effects like this with another image layer over your existing image layer, and play around with adding effects to multiply or even color the layer below. It's pretty cool stuff. Yeah, I'm messing around now with these, trying to get set up for the. It's not jitter. It's not just spacing, but it's actually like it's kind of like, yeah, there we go. Start to get it. I've got to make sure that it's following. There you go. So it's rake but not random, so that way it follows the string, and we got the stroke set to basically skip. So I'm kind of like putting just rings on Suzanne, looking like she's been sewn together. Or you can think about it like this: if it was like a butcher shop, here's the place where you're going to cut for the surgery. And it works with the curve tool, so you can be a little bit more precise. All right, guys, have some fun. ART equals FUN. Have a great one. Keep on blending.